This absolute monster of a CPU cooler can do something that you probably have never seen before. And along with a pretty good valued case that comes with not just one, not just two, not just three, but 6 pre-installed fans, we are going to have a pretty damn good time today. Hey you absolutely beautiful and adorable people, I'm Edu, and today we're going to be taking a look at some pretty cool innovation. And we're talking about the PCCOOLER RZ820 air cooler. And I gotta say, this thing, I don't know, just look at it. It is massive. I guess that just by taking a very quick look at this product, you will already be able to tell that this is indeed a very high-end CPU cooler. And I say high-end even though the price, at least right now, doesn't really reflect that. It is, at the time of recording this video, going for $65 on Amazon, but it does usually cost around $120 to $130, which is a very high-end price for an air cooler. Taking a quick look at the specs will show us that this is a double fan, 8 heat pipe monster, and we're looking at the following dimensions: 161 by 150 by 165 millimeters. Now, with coolers as big as this one, you practically always have a very high chance of running into some RAM clearance issues. But that is no problem for this cooler, since the outer fan's height is very easily adjustable to account for very tall RAM. It is mounted on some kind of rail which allows for this, and this is an amazing feature if you ask me. Only thing to look out for here is that adjusting the fan will obviously add to the height of the cooler as well. Taking a look inside the box now, and I have to say I really appreciate what they've done here. Very nicely thought out layout with different boxes for each socket. We first have the AM5/AM4 mounting kit, and then pretty much every modern Intel LGA socket kit as well, and the long box containing the other accessories for mounting the cooler. We also get a manual, but like, come on, we're professionals here. I'm just kidding, never throw away PC part manuals, trust me on this one. And then finally the big boy itself. Really nice touch here with the impossible to miss cover. Most coolers use stickers that clearly say remove before installation, but people still make mistakes. And would you look at that, even some pre-applied thermal paste in a very satisfying pattern if I do say so myself. Now going back to the accessory boxes, inside the AMD kit we get the 2 mounting brackets. In the Intel box we find basically exactly the same, but for Intel we also get a very sleek looking backplate. And inside the accessory box we find the following things: a tube of VX90 thermal paste, even though the cooler already has pre-applied thermal paste, but this is very useful for future reapplications, so really nice touch here, PC Cooler. An extra PWM splitter cable, which is again a very nice touch and very rare to see actually. A pair of fan clips, the double-sided standoff screws for the mounting system, and finally the necessary hex star Allen key, or whatever the hell this thing is called. I like to call it a screwdriver, but you know, oh well, I'm a PC guy, not a mechanic. Installation is also very quick and easy. I can only show you how to do it on AM5 since I don't have an Intel system lying around, but the steps are going to be pretty much exactly the same, except you will need to install the backplate as well, which again is very easy to do. Pop open the AMD AM5/AM4 box, undo the 4 screws of the original retention brackets and take both sides off. Can't show you mine because I lost them about a year ago when I installed my old cooler, but this is what they look like, those 2 black plastic pieces on each side of the socket. Take the double-sided screws out of the accessory box and the screwdriver, screw the 4 double-sided screws into the motherboard just like so, then place the AMD brackets pointing towards the CPU. You can even see the little arrow showing the direction in which these need to be placed, and then lastly screw the last 4 screws on top and you're golden. I didn't use the pre-applied thermal paste in my case since I had a little bit left in an Arctic tube of mine, and I wanted to get rid of it, so skip this step entirely if it's your first installation. Oh, and by the way, I put way too much thermal paste on that CPU, but hey, you know, it's all good. Now, all that's left is to take the cooler itself, remove the top magnetic panel by pulling on this little plastic, take out the inner fan by pulling it from these little holding holes, align the cooler properly on the mounting bracket, and then screw down the last 2 screws. Just a quick tip, don't tighten one side too much at once, and instead tighten each a little bit at a time. Once you're done doing that, slot the middle fan back in, make sure there's no cables getting in the way, put the magnetic top back on, and plug in the fans into the CPU fan header and the ARGB cable into one of the ARGB headers on your motherboard. And that's it. Simple as that. And now for the actual performance of the cooler, well, it's pretty obvious that it was fantastic. Sadly, the only cooler that I did have on hand to compare it with was my old Deepcool AK500. And yes, I am aware of the fact that this is not going to be a very fair comparison, since this is a much beefier cooler than the AK500. And it would be much fairer to compare this cooler with something like the Peerless Assassin, an HD15, and the Assassin 4 from Deepcool, for example. But nevertheless, here are some examples. In a 24-degree air-controlled room using a Ryzen 5 7600X, with a negative 20 microvolt undervolt and a power limit of 85 watts. Starting with some games here, we can take a look at Red Dead Redemption 2. While running at 2560 by 1440 with the maximum settings possible, and after about 30 minutes of gameplay, the RZ820 averaged 61 degrees, while the AK500 averaged 68. And this difference is basically just everywhere all across the board. In Marvel Spider-Man's 2 is basically the exact same story. In The Last of Us Part 2, we see 66 degrees versus 74. In Expedition 33, we see a 64 versus 72 degree difference. And again, I'm just gonna let the graphs speak for themselves. Gaming was an absolute breeze for this cooler. The CPU genuinely never passed 70 degrees, even in those more intensive titles. In synthetic benchmarks, the trend continues, and we see around a 5 to 10 degree difference in temperatures. And on average, over the 10 games that I've actually tested, the RZ820 averages 63.3 degrees, while the AK500 averaged 72.3. So exactly a 9 degree difference on average. And now onto the cons, which there are definitely quite a few. Even though this cooler's most awesome and impressive feature is that rail system for the outer fan, I could not for the life of me figure out a way on how to actually take that fan off. Let me know in the comments below if you do have this cooler and you have managed to find a way to do this. I mean, I could literally rip it off, but you know. So the problem that actually occurs here is that if the fan breaks, well, it just kind of breaks. The size of this cooler is just absolutely massive as well, which I wouldn't necessarily consider a con, since you shouldn't even consider something of this size if you don't already know that you have the space for it. And the number one problem that I did have with this cooler was the noise level. Though I currently have no means of testing exactly how loud the fan can get, I can safely tell you that I feel like you basically need to make a custom fan curve in the BIOS for this cooler. Now on the bright side, this cooler is so efficient and good at doing its job that simply by limiting the RPM at certain lower temperature intervals completely solved the entire problem to the point where it was basically just completely silent. So overall, big thumbs up for this cooler. Just the right amount of RGB for a sleek aesthetic, easy to install, and the performance is absolutely great. And I can definitely recommend it. You can find the link in the description. And now onto the case. The PCCOOLER C3T500 ARGB, currently going for around $120 on Amazon. And for that price, this case does bring some serious value to the table. We're looking at a mid-tower case with a whopping 6 pre-installed fans. And you guys know how much I love myself some pre-installed fans. Also love the fact that the side and bottom intake fans are reverse blade fans, bonus points for that. Even more bonus points for the fact that every single fan is already plugged into the PWM ARGB fan hub at the back of the case, and it's basically just plug and play. The side of the case is very well made, with the back panel having cutouts for the fans and also filters for them. The front side panel and the back panel each have one single thumb screw holding them in place. So to remove them, simply unscrew the thumb screw, remove that little metal piece, and then push on that little metal lip, and then simply slide the panel upwards, and well, that's it. And the exact same thing applies for the front side panel as well. The front glass panel sadly does not come off, which does make it a bit uncomfortable to build in, but it's definitely not a deal breaker. And also it's really nice to see screwable PCIe brackets on the back of the case. There's this little cover that has a thumb screw, which gives you access to unscrew the brackets themselves. Filters are pretty much absolutely everywhere in this case. We have a filter up top, as I've said before, filters on the back panel that are all magnetic by the way, and then a filter on the bottom for the bottom intake fans. Now in the back of the PC, there's also an accessory box, which I had taken out earlier, that basically contains extra motherboard standoff, screws, and everything else you need to build in this case. We also have some neatly tied up cables for the front panel connections, which are USB-C, USB 3.0 for the two USB 3.1 ports on the top of the case, HD audio 4R mic in, and then power and power LED. And you also get a removable hard drive bay at the back of the case as well, which is also very nice to see. So overall, I really like the build quality and everything else that you get with this case. I think it's an absolutely great buy. Good job, PCCOOLER. But this is definitely not a perfect product either. I believe that the best way to test a PC case is to obviously build a PC inside of it. And since I didn't really have any spare parts lying around, I decided to rebuild my own PC into this case. And here's the issues that I've encountered with it. The unremovable front glass panel definitely did make the experience a bit more difficult, but again, not a deal breaker. There are no rubber grommets for the cables, which does sort of take away from the look and feel of this case. If you mount a full-size ATX motherboard into this case, you will have literally zero space on the bottom of the case to route any sort of cables through. So things like your USB 2.0, HD audio, your JFP1 connections are all going to have to come in from the side. And my biggest issue by far was the USB 3.0 connector. I know that most motherboards have the USB 3.0 connector on the right hand side, but some of them, and mine included, have it on the bottom right. And besides the fact that there was genuinely no space to route the cable from underneath the motherboard, I had to take out the middle fan from the bottom just to barely be able to plug in the USB 3.0 cable. And even though I somehow managed to plug it in without breaking anything, since the USB 3.0 cable is humanity's worst creation, the fit fit is very, and I mean very tight. And the last thing that I do want to point out, even though it's not necessarily a con, but I definitely recommend that you do this, is that even though this case does come with 6 pre-installed fans, 5 of them are intake and only 1 is for exhaust. So I would recommend you install 2 or 3 more fans up the top of the case if you don't already have an AIO. I didn't film the entire build process, but you can see me installing my trusty 7900 GRE. God, how I love this card. And then the build was absolutely complete. Now don't worry, I did test it before putting the side panels on, so I avoided the bad luck from the PC gods. And here is the finished result. Overall, great product, does have its quirks, but they just imply a little bit of extra work. The case itself is very good looking, pretty decent looking fans if I do say so myself, included fan hub and so on. And the other negative thing I have to say about this case is the fact that the fans were also quite noisy. It was basically the exact same story as with the cooler. Now I don't really want to blame this on the fans themselves since it could just be a weird BIOS thing, but again, a quick fan curve later and the problem was completely gone. Great products from a great brand that not enough people know of, that I simply recommend with all my heart. And massive thanks to PCCOOLER for partnering up for today's review. I've had a lot of fun playing around and testing them. You can find the Amazon links in the description below for both of these products, and while you're at it, drop us a sub if you enjoyed the video, and you can also join our Discord server as well. And with all that being said, have yourselves a very beautiful and vivero day, and I'll see you in the next one.